Bear with me. Okay, we're recording. So once again, welcome to AFQY Women Event, the inaugural event, which is of course this morning on International Women's Day. We decided to do something special for women because the number of requests over the 13 years that AFQY has been running to do something that wasn't after hours, it didn't involve alcohol. And hence, with the assistance of Leslie White, who's helping me with the controls today, she said, get it done, do it on National Women's Day, and let's do something at the Winter Garden Pavilion in May. It's all set up. We have a breakfast, coffee, and have some speakers. It'd be lovely. So we got all set up for that, and of course, COVID came along, and we moved to online, and here we are this morning. So that gives you a little bit of background to A Few Quiet Yarns and the genesis of this very event, and why we're doing it. I did want to share with you a little bit more background, my personal background as to why I do this. So Ryan the Lion, while it might seem a little bit childish, it actually is my childhood nickname, but there's a whole range of aspects that tie into this beautifully with regards to actually who I am and my personal brand. So one, I'm extremely outspoken on causes that I believe in. So my little roar has always been out there supporting those that need support or those that I think should be supported because it's the right thing to do. The other side of it is that AFQY is all about meeting the person. So this is about networking. We're going to be doing a lot of breakout rooms so you can have smaller group discussions, and then we'll bring those discussions back into the bigger space. Hence the opportunity to meet people that you don't know and also catch up with people that you already do know. Hence that relationship focus. But going back, we used to keep our personal life pretty personal at work. And over the last 20 years, that's changed. We now bring our full selves to work. So by having my nickname, which outside of work, we have a nickname with our family, we have a nickname with our sports team, we have a nickname with our mates. So I use my nickname in the professional space as a way of signifying that I'm bringing my full self to work, and this is the genuine, authentic me. So now back to the story at hand, which is my background, which specifically relates to today's effort. So we're looking at, on my screen, if you look at my screen, you'll see there's a photo of Rose Florence Ashton on her motorbike. So my grandma on my dad's side was the first, or one of the first, definitely first in her area, to wear trousers, as you can see in this photo, and ride a motorbike, which wasn't allowed for women at that time, from the farm into town. And this is in Central Otago. So women were allowed to ride horses, but only side saddle in this time. So when she rode Granddad's motorbike in, the town mayor came up to her with a big kerfuffle and said, "Oh, you can't ride a motorbike into town. You're a woman. You can't wear trousers." So Grandma, as I knew her, turned around and said, "Well, if you want to come and work my farm in 7 petticoats, you're more than welcome. Otherwise, if you're worried about a woman, let's worry about you being, you're blocking the way of a woman. So get out of my way, I'll get some supplies and get back to the farm." And this, of course, became a big sort of furor in the little Central Otago city. But yeah, just practically speaking. And I remember talking to her when I was a young fella about this, and she said, "I just don't understand it. Have you ever worked on a farm in 7 petticoats?" Which is what women used to wear under their dress back in the day, under their skirt. So it was always quite amusing because, of course, the era I grew up in, and most of you, it would have been quite different to hear this type of story and understand that women weren't allowed to do certain things, or at least it was to me. And that leads on to part 2 of 3 parts. The next part is my mum. So as a 9-year-old, I remember standing in the kitchen and mum coming home from work. And when dad got home from work, because mum would be home at 3 when we were that young, and for after school, and dad came home from work. And mum has been working in IT for 40 years. So as a 2-year-old, I used to run around her feet at university when she was doing the mainframe punch cards and getting all that in. So just to give you context. So she was now working and taking a paper-based system to IT back in the early days, when things weren't as glamorous in IT as they are now, you could say. And she came home and exclaimed, she said, "Oh, you wouldn't believe what happened today. My boss sat there with his leg crossed, you know, the ankle on the knee, with the ankle on the knee, and his fly undone and his package poking out, wearing underwear, but his package poking out, and his arms behind his head, and said, Janelle, you don't know what you're doing. You're just a fucking woman." And I can still remember my dad, who was then, or still is 6'5", but about 20 stone, a big monster of a number 8, and pretty ardent sort of rugby person. And his reaction was, "Oh, I'm going to go down there tomorrow and I'm going to ring his neck." And you'll be pleased to know that Mum just quietly turned around and said, "No, you don't need to do that. I can look after myself. I'm just telling you what happened." So as a 9-year-old, I remember that A, this happened, B, my father's reaction that it wasn't acceptable, and then also my mother's reaction that she, of course, would handle it. The icing on the cake is that she went on to develop a system that the World Health Organization asked New Zealand government if they could share to the rest of the world, because it was the best system, the best reporting, and if all countries could use the same system in reporting, then they would have really good consistent reporting that they could use really easily, rather than having all different types coming in. So literally, as we talk about world-class IT systems, that woman that didn't know what she was effing doing, per se, created a world-class IT system still used by the World Health Organization, albeit a few years older, she would say herself. So hence, this is why I have a huge support of women and gender equality. It was a few years ago that I found out that the world I grew up in isn't the same as the real world I lived in. And I think I remember the first article I read when International Women's Day hit the scene talked about New Zealand having a 5% disparity, and some other places in the developed world having up to a 23 to 25% disparity on the likes of pay, positions, and all the different aspects that are measured through work. So with that, I think I've probably shared enough. I've certainly given you a good idea of why I'm doing this, what we're here for, or why we're here. And what I'd like to do now is just give you the final bit of detail, which is I'd like to put us into a series of breakout rooms for around 5 to 7 minutes to give you the opportunity to say hello, to share what your challenges or what you'd like to challenge, what you'd like to discuss. And then when we come back into a group, I'll bring you all back into the main room. I would like to invite someone from those groups to put their hand up, volunteer, to share what their group discussion was about, and then to enable some group discussion before going back into another breakout room. So with that, I'll put you into the first set of breakout rooms. And if in there you can work out who might be the person that will share, and we'll just work it out quite casually as we come back in and get a range of discussions going and flying across the group. And ideally, this will be the last to hear of me, because I want to hear from you. All right, let's go into some breakout rooms. Oh, I just want to check that I have unmuted you.
And Ryan, we've got 62 amazing women and some men on the line too.
Excellent. So just to check that everyone can get off mute now.
Yeah, I think that's working.
Cool. All right.
We're free.
We have a voice again.
Yeah.
We have more joining. We've got about 64 now.
Yes.
Oh, I love the lovely colour of, what is it, Sasha, your background, your paint behind on the wall is gorgeous.
Green. You should see the rest of my house. It's ridiculous.
Take us for a tour.
Yeah.
All right. See you all soon. Thank you very much. JKP.
Hello.
Hello.
Had quite a big night last night.
Oh, that's good.
How are you?
Not too bad. So you may disappear into a breakout room. You may be staying in this as your breakout room.
Ah, Kerry's on my breakout room. Cool.
Hello, kia ora. How are we?
Good. How are you, Kerry?
I'm good. I'm good. I apologise. I actually I'm in the car with my son doing school drop off, so I can't be on video. So yeah, all good.
That's
Looking
all
forward to
right.
it.
Well, just waiting to see. I think we've still got Svetlana, Donna Marie, and Michelle, and yourself. So I'd really like to step back and be, be quiet on this one and let someone else run the breakout room, if that's okay. Svetlana, would you like to manage the group and get us going in terms of having the discussion around the challenges and what we're here to discuss and celebrate today for International Women's Day?
Yes, I don't mind. So, morning, everyone. My name is Svetlana Kostrikina. So, for me, 8th of March is quite a heritage holiday, I would say, because I was born in Russia, and it's a big thing there, I would say. Why did you mention that I need to lead a discussion? So, am I the only female in the group, or sorry?
No, you were the other person whose camera was on.
Right.
And
Right.
woman,
Okay, that
rather
makes
than me.
sense.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you
Yeah, I
didn't
don't
want to,
mind
that's no
doing
problem.
that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't know, perhaps maybe each of us could name one challenge that we face in terms of female leadership and female equality. It's kind of probably I'll cite my my good friend who had a very interesting kind of thoughts on whether equality, like true gender equality, can be achieved generally. And so she had two thoughts on that. So first of all, the distribution of responsibilities during childbirth and in the process of childbirth. And the second aspect was, so this is like a biological thing. And the second aspect was social. She was asking, okay, let's honestly answer the question, who is washing the toilets in your house? So, so these two things, kind of they reflect that we can say a lot of beautiful words about gender equality and how cool is that, but there is always hard reality and kind of practicalities. So probably practicalities that sometimes move us away from this kind of ideal, I would say. However, I guess the topic of today's conversation is more about gender equality in the workplace, and I guess for me that would be a most important part, because as a young professional, and my work is in the academia. So I've recently defended my thesis, and I'm currently kind of elbowing my way up in the academia, and this is perhaps not the easiest task of all, as you probably know. But yeah, so that's probably me. So I welcome other speakers on the floor, and if you could share your thoughts, that would be great. Ryan, maybe back to you.
Yeah, well, what I'll do is I'll invite Don Marie, who's on mute at the moment, I'm
Mhm.
not sure if that's because you're busy, Donna Marie, which is fine. And if that's the case, then we go to Kerry, and if you can, so we'll just check if we can get Donna Marie, who's here, but maybe not actually possibly here. So how about yourself, Kerry? Because I kind of spoke at the beginning, so I wanted to give other people the opportunity to speak.
All good, man. Yeah, look, I'll do my best, just given that I am driving. So,
Yes.
kia ora, everyone. So, Kerry, I guess what brought me along is obviously International Women's Day, but also I was having a conversation with my daughter, and my background is obviously technology, but I was having she's a 15-year-old. I just asked her, so out of interest, how many of your friends, of which she's probably got a friend group of, I would say, 20 close-ish friends, are really thinking about technology? And her response was none of them. And so that's the first element. The second element is for me, I had a really strong mother who was entrepreneurial. She was the entrepreneur in our family, and did exceptionally well. And I guess I was raised on the basis of knowing that diversity of thought and thinking and background actually led to better outcomes. And I bring that into my work around innovation. So for me, I guess I'm here because I'd like to know what the bloody hell I need to do and the conversations I'm having and the actions I'm taking to actually change what is ahead in front of us. Because I'm deeply concerned that of those 20 kids, data point, that actually none of them see technology as a place to go. And we need their creativity. So that's why I'm here. And that was the end of it. So if anyone else would like to go?
Yep. So I've just checked, and Donna Marie doesn't seem to be present behind her screen. So we'll just it's just the three of us in here. So look, thank you both very much. Both really interesting perspectives. And to answer your question, Svetlana, I probably do 60% of the toilet cleaning, although my wife Nikki still does. And I think part of it is, whether it's joking or serious, mine will never quite be good enough. Needless to say, I did clean a bar top to bottom to get it from a fail to a pass for health and safety, so I can clean. But that's one of the, I guess, one of the everlasting jokes in our household. And yeah, I still can't. No matter what the subject is in today's is women, I just can't understand how anybody can not think of anybody else as equal. Oh, Donna Reed, are you here, Donna? Nope, she's moved, gone. She went into her room. She's got been invited into another room. So, I think of the movie Hidden Figures, right? And that movie came out long after the fact, and I love the fact that it was an African American woman who put a man on the moon. It just seems like it's a gender equality, but also race equality there to sort of really highlight that you precious man, you would never have got to the moon if it hadn't been for a woman who also happened to be African American. So yeah, equality for me, we all should be treated the same, seen the same, regardless of what our biological wrapper looks like. It's who we are and what we can contribute that matters the most to me. So yeah, that's where I was sort of coming from. And I think we've all got the personal stories. And the last bit, just to reiterate, was I really didn't realize that there was such a disparity in the world that I lived in. I know in history it was different, but to me that was back in the old days. So yeah, about 5 years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago, when International Women's Day hit the scene, I was really like, what is this? And I was just got Sharon joining us. So Sharon will come in. Where is she going? Hey, Sharon.
Hi. How
Hi.
are you? Sorry, I'm late.
That's all right. We're just in this is one of the breakout rooms. So anyone new joins this breakout room, and we've just been through the welcome. And I won't go over the long story, but we're here to celebrate International Women's Day, and what we're doing is in the first breakout room where we're discussing our personal story in relation to International Women's Day and the challenge. So Svetlana, Kerry, and myself have just shared. And if you're happy to jump in there, just to give a bit of a round off, Svetlana spoke about the difference between the practicalities and the ideals that we speak about. Practicalities being, only a woman can give birth to a child, so that affects things, and pose the question, who actually cleans the toilet in your house, as one of the practical views. Kerry spoke about his discussion with his daughter and some of their friends, and the fact that none of them are interested or focused, if I put it that way, Kerry can correct me, on technology, whereas his mother was a very successful entrepreneur. So he's questioning, how does he, I guess, interest his daughter and their friends in following the footsteps of his mother, so they, ideally choose to. And with that, we invite you to share for a couple of minutes before we go back into the main room. I'll bring everyone back together. What are your observations? What is it you'd like to share about International Women's Day, and any of the aspects from your perspective?
Yeah, thank you. Again, apologies for late. I'm calling in from New Zealand. So for me, it was important because I think the more networking and connecting that we do is really important for women. I was a single parent of 3 children for most of my career, and that was always a really big juggling act. I always sort of felt that you could have a career and children, or children and a social life, or a social life and a career, but trying to do 3 of them, you always had to sacrifice something. And so it was quite tough, and my kids are all in their 20s now. So looking back, I'm quite proud of where we got to, but it was a real battle. And I think women, and it's great to see some men on this call, we need to sort of support each other in this kind of career development. And I'm really interested in how things are evolving with more flexible working environments. Potentially, I think that can be really beneficial for women. And there's also an alternative viewpoint, I guess, but a little bit more flexibility in the workplace in terms of hours and where you can do work from can mean that women can be really productive, but still do things like pick up their children from school, or work from home if they're sick, or those kind of things. So really celebrating the progress that we've done in enabling women to work more, but there's a long way to go.
Yes. And even I think it's I'll just briefly share. I think it's a shift in the change over time of generations. So when I started, I spoke about my grandma and my mum, and I noticed that you still said for a woman to work and pick up the kids. It wasn't for the husband to pick up the kids. And it's still just in our thinking that the woman has most of those responsibilities, like Svetlana spoke about, the practicalities of childbirth. But what I'll do now is I'll take us all back into the main room. So we've been just over 10 minutes, which is a good stint to get started. So I'll take us all back into the main room now. And if you just bear with me, it'll take a few seconds and we'll go into the next stage. Right. Thank you very much for sharing, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Jason, who's just new in the group.
Yeah, apologies, Ryan. I'm travelling, so keeps cutting out every 5 minutes, but I think I've got most of it for the last 20.
No worries. Well, we're going to have everyone back in the main room in a second. Just waiting for them all to join us. They've been invited, and I'm watching the 45, 42, 40-second countdown, and no one's come back. So they must be deep in conversation. I'll have to apologise for interrupting what must be a good conversation in each of those rooms. But yeah, what we'll do next is we'll invite the floor, so they can basically put their hand up and be able to offer what was discussed in their breakout room. So is welcome to Paul, Jenny, Haley. This is one of the fun things about doing the online sessions, is watching everybody come back from the breakout rooms. All right. So welcome back from the breakout rooms, everybody. Just bear with us a moment. I will just mute all for now. And yes, you have the ability to unmute yourself, but if you just give us 5 seconds while we get everybody back in from the breakout rooms. And it was interesting to see that when I hit breakout, welcome, invite everyone back, it took nearly 30 seconds for anyone to actually start coming back in, which means you were deep in an amazing discussion. And that's what we're going to talk about next, is what discussions you are having, and see what pops up, what trends there are, and some of the interesting bits and pieces. We certainly had a couple of really interesting parts. In fact, what each person shared was really interesting. So it's going to be great to see what comes out of it. So I think we probably now have got everybody back in. So what I will do is ask everyone to unmute. And what I've got 3 screens of faces at the moment. So I'm just going to cycle through those to get them all on. And if I just close the participants page and the chat page for a second, then we get more. I'm just going full screen. So I'm just going to take a few screenshots so that I've got a record of everybody. Now, what I'd like to do is invite someone to be the first to put their hand up and offer to share what you discussed in your group, to give us a brief summary, just a couple of minutes. And Shelley Davies, get in there. So if I can, hang on, you've just chatted. I just went to spotlight you. There you go. So it's going to spotlight Shelley Davies, which means, there we go. You take a couple of minutes to share what was discussed in your group, some of the excerpts, give us a bit of an idea, and then we'll get some feedback from the room.
Unsurprising, offer someone an audience, and Shelley says, oh, pick me. Kia ora tātou. I'm very disappointed that I'm the only one in my dressing gown. Like, I really thought that was the dress code for this morning, but hey, man. Oh, there we go. Svetlana's in her dressing gown too. What a gorgeous way to start the day with celebrating wahine and mana wahine and tēnā koe. Rayana for organising this for us. So in our group, we had Wendy, who's an accountant, but not an accountant. And we had Katie, who has recently moved from the travel industry into employment. And we just went deep straight away and talked about what were our superpowers. And between us, we said our superpowers were our ability to love, being a Māori woman, and our intuition. And then that led us into how women bring those things into leadership and the power when we really own those things and stand in the truth. And then, yeah, our conversation went from there, but we just kind of went real deep, real fast, because, you have to when you've only got a few minutes. I'm speaking at an International Women's Day event this afternoon with the Institute of Directors in Tauranga. So my whole day is going to be about celebrating women. Actually, my whole every day is probably about that. So rock on, whānau.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's a pretty good rundown. And yes, we'll have through the session the ability for, if anyone would like to share or introduce anything else that they are doing in relation to International Women's Day or other such things, such as Rosalind, who is one of the organising team for Women in Data Science. So perhaps that means you're next, Rosalind, to comment on what Shelley shared and also share what your group discussed, if that's okay.
Sure. So yeah, just quickly, I'm again a bit like Shelley, spending a chunk of my day involved in activities that celebrate women, in particular women in data science, is a global event that I'm speaking in later today. It's a 24-hour event that's going to chase the sun around the world with global speakers, and it kicked off 5 years ago, courtesy of a feisty friend of mine who was invited to go to a conference, disgusted that there were no female keynotes, challenged the conference. So, you know, that challenge to change theme. She challenged the conference organizer, said, hey, you've got no female keynotes, what's with that? And they said, oh, but we couldn't find any. There's just not enough women out there. I can see Shelley just about falling off her chair. Indeed, that was my friend's reaction. So my friend founded this conference series where all of the speakers are female. Anyone's welcome in the audience, but all of the speakers are female. So I'm speaking in the global version this afternoon, and we're hosting some New Zealand events as well. So the New Zealand events are up on my LinkedIn. But in terms of what our group talked about, I'd actually love it if you could spotlight Jenny Wiley, who had a really specific example that I think resonates more widely with the challenge.
Oh, kia ora. Thank you, Rosalind. You were put on the spot. Look, we did talk about really similar themes, I think, to Shelley. We talked about collective power and an energy to cause change, and sometimes that can feel overwhelming, because if you're doing it in isolation to the wider movement, it really doesn't feel like inroads. And I have a specific example, and it's about how, because I'm out of sport, so how funding goes into sports for young people, and of every dollar that comes out of community trust funding, 80 cents will go into boys and men, and about 20 cents into girls and women. And I think anyone that's a parent, an auntie, anyone actually with a brain cell can see that actually that's not even fair at the real base level of what we're doing with our young people and how we value their contribution and give them opportunities. So my big thing has really been pushing for even data. Rosalind, I'm not a data scientist, never going to be, but just really pushing for, because that makes it factual decision making as opposed to this emotional, because you can get quite stroppy about it. So yeah, getting the data is the first thing, but also influencing the change and asking people to all look at that and go, that's not fair, it's not equal, no one's getting a good run at this. So that's kind of, we talked about that, and I think we as a group of people that are on this call can all make a choice as to what we take up from things like that, and how we question when we make a contribution, whether it be to a school or a trust fund, or if you're making charitable donations or things like that, that where is this going? Are we going to see this spread equally? Yeah, so that's kind of our thing.
That's fantastic. Now we have a person on the call who would like to bring in on that, I guess, investment in sport. It's Gail Patton, who's the marketing manager for Downer and sponsor of the Black Ferns. So just thought it seemed like a natural progression to your point that you made, and fantastic, Jenny, because yeah, that should be absolutely fair and square, spread across both. So Gail, if you could share a little bit about the sponsorship and the work that you do in that space.
Yeah, hi, kia ora everyone. Gail from Downer, and hugely disappointed yesterday or the day before to find out that World Cup is not happening, and you know, raising the question around if it had been the Men's World Cup, would that have happened, and if there was more to it around funding. Just throwing that out there. But yeah, definitely, I mean, it was great a year or two ago when they actually announced that, you know, women in rugby would be starting to get paid rather than trying to work and do it, you know, so many years after the All Blacks and other men and professional sport were being paid. So we have made some progress, but there is still huge disparity. And I guess the reason why we decided to sponsor the Black Ferns rather than the men's team, although we do also sponsor the Māori All Blacks, we sponsor the Black Ferns Sevens as well, and because it's really important to us from an inclusion and diversity perspective. So that's the path we went down, and we try and support them as much as we can. It's been very difficult this year with COVID, and they haven't had any game time like many others. But yeah, it is a problem, and I recognise what you're saying about that 2080 split, and something has to be done about it. It's incredibly unfair, and I know there's a lot of people working out there to make those changes, but we need to speed it up. But
Cool. Well, thank you very much for that, Gail. Now I'd like to take us to Wellington, to a newfound friend who we haven't met in person but already has an AFQY nickname. So this is the Mangler, and I'm waiting to see the reaction. Yes, she's... It's a bit of a private joke, I guess, in some regards, but it's through a bit of banter. Sue McLean from Wellington, if I put you onto spot, you're allowed to explain that as well.
Outrageous. Yes, I'm Sue McLean, CIO at Greater Wellington. And I had a great little breakout group with Kylie, Janet, and I have forgotten the other two names, which is terrible. One of the things that really stood out for me was Kylie talking about how her dad had to say to her, listen, hun, you will be judged. You will be judged on the colour of your skin. You'll be judged because you're Māori. Should that never, ever have my parents said anything like that to me, and never had to. I've never had to have a conversation to say, this is how you're going to be, this is how it's going to be for you. And that took me, Kylie, that took me by surprise. And I did my entire thesis on my MBA on is quota an effective means of increasing female participation on corporate boards. So I'd studied the hell out of that, but never once did that come up on what it would be like to be a kid growing up in the 70s and 80s, and your parents having to tell you, hey, life's going to be a little bit hard. My parents weren't ever home because they were always busy working, but that's a different story. That was really interesting, Kylie. Thanks for sharing that. So yeah, what's really great to be here and great to see all the minds and some of the more stats coming through. I'm pleased that we hopefully are bringing up a generation that will be thinking differently about how we treat our peers. I've always been at IT for all of my life, and you can guarantee I probably haven't been paid as much as my peers, and I found that out when I was working at my last job, which is part of the reason why I left. I thought I need equality. I'm working my ass off and getting paid significantly less than my peers. And being a woman, I tend to, or just being Sue, I tend to take on more and say yes to more stuff and take on the emotional baggage of the team as well. A whole bunch of blokes, and a couple of them were not well, a couple of them had concussions, so I put my hand up and said, yes, I'll help, I'll take over the people leadership of their teams, and there was none of the other blokes were putting their hands up to do that. So it was kind of, a different approach into management women take, I think. We sort of tend to pick up stuff that we probably shouldn't. But there, thanks for throwing me in the deep end, Ryan. Wasn't prepared for that at all. And yeah, thank you, Kylie, for just opening my eyes a little bit more.
My pleasure, and thank you very much. So just some context, through the travels of AFQY, people pick up the AFQY nickname, which is generally a bit of fun. So nobody please be offended at the nickname. The important thing is what Sue was able to share, and without mentioning too much more about my family and personal details, you probably won't be surprised to know that my mum was in exactly the same boat. But one other aspect was that at about the age of 14, moving on from the original story of 9, there was the point that she came home and said to us two boys, and this I think is particularly of interest. She said, you know how you used to say, sorry, we can't afford that. Well, now I've got a promotion. We can, but don't make a big deal out of it because I now earn more than your father. And he'll be a bit sensitive about it. And I said at the time, what's his problem? Why wouldn't he just be happy? Again, you know, a young person's view of the world with no idea of the history behind it. But yes, society expected the man to earn more, even back when I was 14. So, you know, hopefully in this day and age, I'm sure everyone in this room would like to see that, you know, paid on capability and experience, not on gender, but sadly it's still big differences. Now, what I thought we could do is do one more breakout room and then come back and get some final thoughts and round up. So if you'll bear with me, I'll pop us into a breakout room. I won't leave us there for 10 minutes this time. I'll keep it to the 5 minutes. So if you could you know, take the discussion as you see fit, whether you want to do another sharing of your ideas or discuss what we just, it's completely over to you in your breakout room. And by all means, I look forward to seeing someone popping their hand up to say, love to share when we come back in about 5 minutes. So with that, please be ready for your invite. And when we call you back, if we can get you to come back, that would be much appreciated. So I'll go recreate. And I think I've got the right room numbers. And there we go. So if you can join your breakout rooms, and we'll be back shortly. Thank you so much, everybody. Talk to you very soon. And everyone disappears. Let me see who's still in this room. It's me, Gail, Anu. Are you there, Anu? Oh, it's just Gail and myself. So just so you know, this is recorded, because you're still in this room, this is recorded. I just sort of let you know, because the temptation of it being one-on-one is to have a one-on-one chat. Oh. Okay, so I'm now here by myself. I will go and join a room. Now, I used to be able to know how to join a room. How do I join? There we go.
Yeah, I think that's the same for our kids, right? Being back in school, it's like they can learn from home, or my boys were okay learning from home, but actually the socialness and the connection of being back and having people to talk to was really the thing that they were looking forward to.
Definitely. Also, it's different when you have a choice to work from home or office, where that choice is taken away, so you have to work from office. This feels different.
And we've got the pleasure of Ryan in our session.
So Ryan is here. Hey, Ryan.
So I thought I'll pop in for a quick hello and then I'll duck out because I've got my cousin here. Kirsty.
Hey.
Hello to you, June, and spoken with Gail and Jane. So I just want to say a quick hello and then I'll jump into another breakout room because otherwise I'm just sitting there by myself and recording myself.
Oh, yeah.
Now I've got to work out how to leave the room. There we go. So you enjoy your chat. Really good to see you. And
thanks for setting up.
We'll share when we
Will
come.
do.
So just returning to the main room. I'm now in the main room and
take a product management role in a family business for software, and that's something I'm really excited about. But I was saying in my last breakout room, it's also a direct reflection of the fact that it's exceptionally challenging to find that genuine, challenging, interesting, genuinely flexible part-time work from the outside. I feel like it's a privilege when you're inside an organization. That's often extended, but coming from the outside, it's exceedingly difficult.
Yeah. So when I had coming back to from maternity in the States, I had 2 weeks off, and my husband took time off, and he would bring her to me at work so I could nurse her.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow, that's amazing.
And I feel like that's the other side of the equation, which often doesn't get discussed, is it's not just working mums that need flexibility. It's actually an everyone issue. Everyone's got something going on in their lives that they need flexibility for.
Yeah.
And dads can help if they are offered flexibility as well. Yeah.
And it sounds like there are a lot more dads these days that are really involved, heavily involved in the management of the family, right?
Really
A
cool.
lot of my friends that have got kids that are under 10, their husbands or partners are right in the thick of it, right there with them, which I think is amazing to see how far it's come. You know.
Janine, what do you do?
I work for a telecommunications and security company. And I think just listening to, you talking about maternity leave. Now, I don't have children, so I haven't had to go through that experience at all. But I'm extremely lucky that I work for an organisation that allows us a lot of flexibility and trust to do what we do, but also to be able to manage, the other side of the coin, the family, the commitments, all of that sort of thing as well. So I feel very fortunate in the position that I'm in.
Yeah, we were talking about in the last breakout room how the HR department, for example, is all women, and so they're always
There you go. There you go.
Awesome. I haven't got time now.
Hey, Ryan.
Hey, I thought I'd just pop in for a second. I've been bouncing around all the different rooms.
Oh, as you do.
I'm here. Well, otherwise I'm sitting in the main room by myself, which is not great viewing for the recording.
So
yeah.
Donna Marie, is that my eyesight so bad? Donna Marie, is that your? How about you?
I run my own tech company, an AI tech company in Hamilton. Tanya.ai, yeah. Probably the biggest challenge I have faced within that is really the tech industry. So I've worked for global organisations for a long time, most of my career, working at an exec level, and hadn't really been in the forefront of the tech side. Obviously used consultants, but what I found was when I brought RFPA to New Zealand, I was a lot smarter, and I don't mean this boastfully, but I knew something around AI that the tech leads didn't. So what I found was that rather than them embrace that a woman had that technology expertise, they basically try to push me out. So that was about 4 years ago, and then I just decided rather than let that sway me, I'd just stand up my own global tech company for fun. But what I found was that it was threatening because tech has been such a male-dominated industry that a woman who has a different way of thinking about things, being able to have that knowledge and then also execute it really well, it fell badly. And so what I think is by standing up Tania.ai, celebrating women, especially a Māori woman in tech, is a good thing. It can be hard sometimes, but what I find is that majority of men actually aren't threatened, but there are some that still need to understand that it's okay. Having more heads around the table, whether they're women or not, is a good thing for us. So yeah, that's probably been my biggest challenge.
And how's it going? How's your company going?
We've actually finally received our Amazon sign-off, so we'll be releasing Tania.ai next month in the US, New Zealand, and Australia.
Oh, cup high.
That was my response to trying to push me out in the tech industry 4 years ago when I was working at a global organisation. I was like, right, it's we need to be able to show that it's okay, and that women and men can work together, and that it's that's kind of so we'll be going live in the middle of April. We're just working on our PR campaign, but it's been being first to market, it's been a long road, but.
Isn't that the way that, isn't that when you know you're onto something good, is when people try and pull you back and push you down and stop you?
Isn't that the truth?
So here's a question for you.
Time, but yeah, certainly my husband's kind of laughing now. He, during the time he just wanted to send out the boys from the hood and sort them out.
I don't know if you were in at the very beginning, Donna Marie, but that story was very similar to my mum. I don't know if you hear me talk about that, but yeah, and it's interesting. I think there's, I don't know what it is, whether it's, I reference the bell-shaped curve of people. So, people will make these statements that could be racial, sexist, whatever. I use, Desiree, I use two examples. One is bloody Asian drivers, and bloody drunk Kiwis. Now, funnily enough, I can be one of the worst drivers, and I'm also one of the drunk Kiwis. But the thing is, it's not so much about race or gender or anything, but it's the bell-shaped curve of people with good and bad at the extremes, with the bulk in the middle. So you sort of wonder, what is it that affected that person who, the bad person? Was it just something's not right in the chemistry, or was there some life experience? Or, and I think usually it's that they were taught it by the generation that brought them up.
Oh, definitely when it comes to that racial discrimination, a lot of it, I mean, I was bullied at school for being Chinese, let alone being a woman, a girl, it's a double whammy.
One of the execs in this global org that I worked for, who was actually the sponsor of what I was running, said to me at the end of it, we were closing out, and he said, so, your performance there was nothing wrong with it. He said the problem is that you were a woman, you were smarter, and that it didn't help that you were also Māori. And so it was like almost like a 3-hit, king hit that I didn't realise I was bringing to the table. And so, but I'm happy to continue to stand up and be, do what I got to do.
Nice.
We're just about to go back into the main breakout room. So is it all right if I call on you first, Donna Marie? Would you be happy to share that? Would you be happy to share some of this to the wider community?
Yeah, sure, why not?
Yep, cool. All right, well, thank you very much, team, and thank you for having me in the breakout room. I will bring everyone back in now.
Thank you, ladies.
Here we go. Everyone's coming back. Welcome back as we come into the room. If you can mute yourselves, we're just on 8:58. So I let the room run through because I jumped around a few rooms and was participant of some amazing conversations. So I'm going to let this run over 9 o'clock, and I understand that some people might have a hard 9 and need to leave. So we can, if you need to, then you can. So what I will do is call on, first of all, Donna Marie, who I was just in a room with, sharing about her experience. So I will find Donna Marie, spotlight her, and not steal any of her story or thunder. Where are you, Donna? Donna Marie?
Did you just want me to start talking?
Yeah, please do. And I will find the screen's bouncing around with everyone coming back in, so I'm trying to find you.
No problems. Hi, my name's Donna Marie Pakinga. I'm the founder of Tania.ai, a AI skill that connects Xero accounting software. That we were having in our breakout room was around challenges as a woman. What I had realised was that although I had worked for lots of global organisations most of my career, when I started to move into the tech space, especially around machine learning and AI, I came across as a person who basically threatened the current way of working, which was mostly male dominated. And what I found was that I was delivering what I call a three king hit, which was that I was Māori, I was a woman, and that I knew stuff that they didn't know about technology and AI. And so what it did is it impacted the way that they saw me, and therefore they try to push me out immediately. So that was about 4 years ago. My answer to that was that I stood up my own tech firm, because I think it's important that men and women see that it's okay to be smarter. It's okay that if I know things that others don't, it's okay to be Māori, and it's also okay to be a woman who is working in the tech world, and that we all bring different values to the table. But yeah, that was the challenge that I faced. So that was my answer to being challenged and being pushed out, was I just thought I'd stand up my own global tech company for fun.
I love it. Round of applause. Yeah. Way to stick it to those people with the bad attitudes and wrong worldviews. So now if I could invite someone else to put their hand up and jump in and share their second discussion. Kylie. All right. So I'll ask you to unmute. Oops. Ask to unmute and spotlight you. And thank you so much, Donna Marie, for sharing. I just also want to make sure that I thank Donna Marie because I asked her just a second ago to share that. I think it's great inspiration. So over to you, Kylie.
I just had a fangirl moment at Donna Marie, actually. I'm like, I've got to hook up with that woman. So I actually had a really great group, and funnily enough, Sue McLean and I, we must gravitate like planets because we were in the same breakout room again. So the world was not finished with us being together. The one thing we focused on was actually proactive solutions to move the narrative forward. And one of the things we looked at is, you know, and this is a bit of a call to action, to be honest, for everyone here, is before the next International Women's Day, I think everyone needs to actively do something. And, you know, that can include apprenticeships, internships, scholarships, partnerships with schools in particular to get young people seeing some really good role models. Sue mentioned shadow tech that she's been involved with, and that's another sort of role modeling thing. In my LinkedIn feed today, something called Inspiring the Future Aotearoa popped up, which is again about role modeling and getting invited into schools to talk to young people about what you do and what you're good at. And actually, Stuart also mentioned social media and being where the young people are. So as much as the discussions we have on LinkedIn are really valuable, it's not going to get through to the audience that actually needs to hear us. And those are the young Gen Zs, the young people at schools who are the ones we need to be sharing our knowledge and our journey with. And I think, you know, it's one thing to just talk for, you know, and it's beautiful. I love a good talk. But I seriously think if we want to move that dial, everyone needs to be proactive and get involved and do something to bring more women and more diversity into the space to begin with. And that leads all the way back to young people. So it was a really good conversation, and I loved that there was some active things to come out of it. So yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Kylie. And one of the things I have to also share is that my little speech I did at the beginning, I run it by Kylie over the weekend to check that I wasn't being male or saying stuff accidentally, unintentionally, or white knighting, or all of these things. And one of the things I left off the end, which actually just comes off the back of Don Marie and Kylie sharing, was the fact that I absolutely love the movie Hidden Figures, and the fact that not only was it a woman, it was an African-American woman during a time of oppression just following slavery, that basically precious white man wouldn't have got to the moon without that woman. And I just, when that movie came out, I just like, how come this story is only coming out now? And we all know why. But I just sort of think, you know, wow, imagine what a different world we could have been living in had that been front page news around the world at the time, in a you know, just what, so coming back to your point about doing, yes, we've got to do more. We've got to get those stories out. We've got to get things happening. Just so you know, the LinkedIn event that everyone had accepted, you can still chat in that, and I think that you can go through and you can chat and connect with the different people. So as an action from today, I'd really like to invite you all to connect and keep the discussion going. Now, you'll have lots of things going on in your daily life and stuff like that, but I think if you just make sure that at least once a fortnight you are having a follow-up chat with someone and somehow engaging something that you're doing, you know, I can't tell you what to do, can't dictate what to do, but I'm just suggesting this would be a great way to just keep it bubbling away, and things will bubble away in your own steam. Now, would someone else like to put their hand up? I want to do something. I want to suggest getting one of the younger women to share with us their perspective from what it's like, because I have heard from some people that in the younger generations, again, my perspective was there was no problem. So I'd love to hear from the younger generation if someone would like to put their hand up, or if I can designate someone.
Define younger, Ryan.
Yeah.
Be
Okay.
careful,
I put my foot in it there, haven't I? Younger than me. Oh no, that's probably no. Younger than 100.
Yeah.
I think you know what I'm trying to achieve. Someone.
Me.
So sorry.
Oh no, I was going to say maybe you say millennials if there are any, because that.
Ryan, I can talk to university students if you like.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm not a university student. I just help them, if that helps.
Oh, Bronnie. Okay, go Jedi. Yeah. So Bronnie's nickname, AFQY nickname, is the Jedi. And in her LinkedIn photo, you'll see her wearing her Jedi outfit as part of one of the promotions for Summer of Tech, which is what you're about to sort of speak to that experience.
Yeah. So, sorry. That was a May the 4th be with you campaign we did with Zero, just to celebrate being a geek and just enjoying yourself. So hi, my name's Bronnie. I'm from Summer of Tech. We basically look after university students anywhere in the country, from first year to PhD level, and we help them get internships over the summer. We do that by boot camps and all sorts of things. So if you are keen to mentor and take up that action, please do get in touch. We would love to share some of your stories. They are absolutely incredible, especially you, Donna Marie. That's wonderful. From a student perspective, I guess the cool thing, and I popped a bit of a stat below, is that there's 40.7% of our students are actually female, or sorry, identify as non-male. So it's really encouraging to see not only that statistic, but a lot of the boot camps and the hackathons and things that we do work with the students on is no one really marginalizes anyone else. They just focus on the problem. And one of the things that I absolutely love about that is just watching them work a problem together, and there is no boundary. So it's really encouraging to see university students in that space not feeling like they're not restrained in any way. And I think that's a huge part of all this discussion, that the older generation or the next generation up are having around women in tech. And so what you're doing now is making a difference, and that statistic proves it. So well done to you. What I would also encourage, in my experience in digital marketing as well, is don't be the change that you've rebelled against. I think it's very difficult to easily fall into, managing, for what better word, I don't know what else to call it, the boys club, and being part of it in a way. My encouragement would be to always lead by example. That's the only challenge that I've faced, but I'm so encouraged by the students that I'm seeing coming through.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Bronwyn. And as a thing that you can do is that you can work with the Summer of Tech as a mentor, as a good starting place. So thank you very much for mentioning that and sharing some of the challenges. I think, yeah, setting an example. So would anyone else like to add their thoughts and pieces around today, from any aspect from what you discussed in the breakout room to things you'd like to share now? Obviously, if you need to leave, by all means, feel free, feel encouraged to. We're over 9 o'clock, but for those that'd like to stay on for a little bit more, we'll just have a few more final chats. So anyone want to put their hand up? Desiree, welcome. Oops, I just went to unmute you and muted you because you unmuted yourself. So you unmuted?
I am now, I think, if you can hear me. Kia ora wahine, it's great to be here. I just wanted to share a really interesting perspective from the first group I was in. We had Paul, who was our token male in our group. Not token at all, because he had a really interesting perspective in terms of being a manager and wanting to support the woman in his team, and how he's had to face up to things like a member of his team wanted to complain about sexual harassment from a manager, and talked to him and said, I'm really not sure what to do about this. Would you be willing to support me? And he put his hand up and said, yes, he would. And then coming across things like his wife is finding it really difficult to get back into work, the challenge for her, because she's just had their baby. And so those challenges that we have as women when we leave the workforce and then want to try and come back. So he was talking about that, and then the attitudes of certain males in his teams. He was having a cigarette, and one of his male buddies came along and said, hey, you know, that woman, she's really hot. And he was like, what is going on here? You can't talk like that. So for males who are willing to stand up for us ladies with the challenges that we have, they have challenges as well. So it was really, really useful to hear that from him.
Yes.
That's all I needed to say.
Yeah, no, I was making sure I didn't jump in too soon. So thank you very much for that. And look, just a quick one on that being a guy. Yeah, the first time I was confronted with that type of situation, it was a question that flashed through my mind. Do I do something or do I not? What's appropriate? What should I do? What will be the ramifications? And I was actually at an AFQY, and I was standing waiting to talk to a dear friend of mine that I know very well. This might be the wrong way to say it, but I've got to give context. Let's say she was a statuesque, classic, beautiful woman by society's normal perceptions, right? And this guy come up and looked her up and down, checked her out, and then turned and said to me, said, yeah, I can see why you're waiting behind that ass. and he was, so he's a multi-millionaire. He had just sold his company for millions of dollars. He was a big man. He's an older man than me. He obviously has a lot of power in the industry, and my event could be damaged if I upset him. And these are all the things that flashed through my head in a second. And I turned around and said to him, I said, you can't fucking talk like that in here. And then I went, and I can't swear in here, but you can't talk like that, and I'm not having it. I said, you can either change your attitude or you can get out. And he just looked at me and went, what are you talking about? And I said, you just made a reference, and you looked her up and down, and then you made a reference to why I'm waiting to see that person. And I said, that's not acceptable. AFQY doesn't accept it, and I'm not having it. So you can either get out or you can change your attitude. And he was visibly didn't know what to do or say, and was affronted. And I was standing there and was almost sort of like the Mexican standoff. I don't, that's PC to say these days, but we were just standing there. And I said, come on, let's get a beer. We'll go outside and I'll explain what I'm talking about. So we went outside and had a bit of a chat. And I said, you know, you made this reference. You made this action of looking up and down. I said, you may not even realize that. I said, but this is a business networking event. I said, and aside from that, we're all human. I said, so I was stuck in the position of, do I say something to you? And I said, you are an important, powerful person in the industry. I said, that could be the end of my business if you wanted to run around and tell everyone, something and they'd listen to you. I said, but I did what I felt was right. And I said, so I hope you understand it came from a place of, good place. So this is 2019. So he said, yeah, look, okay, cool, no worries. And he shuffled off. He felt a bit embarrassed. So at the end of the event, he actually come up to me and said, I've been thinking about it and you're so right. And thank you for calling me out on it.
Yeah, nice, nice.
So what I thought was so good about that was he went away and thought about it. It wasn't just a snap decision. It wasn't just saying the right thing at the right time to be polite or correct or whatever. He went away and thought about it and come back and said, yeah, look, I'm sorry. I'll change. So,
yeah, and I guess for me, what that reminded me of was, I'm Chinese, so the big thing is males are really important in our culture, to the point where when China had its one-child policy, so many girls were either literally being left on the hill to die when they were born or put into orphanages. And I come from a family of, I've got three sisters, so there's 4 of us, no boys in my immediate family. And Dad was getting teased by his buddies saying, hey, you got to keep trying, Kit, you might have a boy. And his response was, well, I have 4 beautiful daughters. I don't need to keep trying. Thanks, Dad. Shout out to my dad.
That's beautiful. And shout out to your dad. That's really, really well done on his behalf. So would anyone else like to share their perspectives, discussions? I'm just checking.
I call Brian.
Yes, goes.
Hello. Hey.
Hey.
I just had a couple of things to say from the themes. The first one was that I think that people confuse female leaders and feminine leadership traits. And I think that we need to recognize that feminine leadership traits are valuable regardless of gender. And I think that, sometimes the weight of having the empathy, the people leadership, the listening, the all of that sits on our shoulders. And I think that there needs to be a conversation about the difference between female leaders and feminine leadership traits, and that we need to be also encouraging everyone to value those traits. And the second was a conversation around imposter syndrome that was in one of our first sessions, and that we had to talk about whether men have that experience too, and we talked about the fact that maybe, and I'm being a bit binary here, and I don't mean to be, whether people who people who are not female also have that. And we were talking about mental health and how there's this box that we still put people in about being strong and not sharing, and what's lost by people not sharing that. And I shared an exercise around imposter syndrome that's around naming the imposter syndrome and drawing a picture of this person that is not you around imposter syndrome. And mine's Nora Batty, for those English people amongst you, with the wrinkly tights and the judgmental fierce face. And for me, naming the imposter syndrome voice in my head and really getting really specific about her voice and how she acts and how she points her brush at me, put some space between the imposter syndrome and me, so that I recognize that, I could not be absorbed by the imposter syndrome and just have a bit of space in between it. So we had a bit of a conversation about how that shows up for us in the workplace and in life generally. Cheers.
That's really cool. Thanks so much, Sasha. So one of the things, the second point you're talking about, I was thinking, don't forget to mention feminine traits management. The other side of that is that when women show, I don't know what label to put on it, if it's masculine or aggressive, then they get labeled, and it's a big discussion, whereas men are being men, and that's Absolutely. Cool. Whereas when women show a bit of strength, it's seemingly a problem. So yes, some really great points. And of course, I didn't stress it, it was in my little bit that I got Kylie to test, is that in this event, what I wanted to say is everyone is welcome. You talked about non-binary. I have friends under every aspect of LGBTQI+, and they're all welcome. We just happen to be celebrating International Women's Day today. So would anyone else like to have a share? And then we'll probably look at doing the final share and close out. So does anyone have anyone that they particularly like to hear from? Oh, there we go. I've got Melissa. Good on you. Put your hands up. Go, Otago. And
I'll have to unmute myself, won't I?
you are?
Excellent. I was just, one of the things we had Jason in our group. Jason, what was his surname? Cherrington. And also your story, Ryan, about growing up with mothers that I guess what I would view as sort of had good careers, were strong, really drove, not so much drove, but just had the empowerment. I had sort of the opposite upbringing. I feel like I'm almost a generation behind. So my mother gave up any thought of a career to raise kids. She's never really got back into it, even when we grew up. I had two brothers. I found myself always in big groups of men. I worked in financial services for 20 years. And I feel like, and I grew up with being told that I was too loud and that I needed to be quiet and those sorts of things. So in my 40s, I feel like I'm only just discovering my voice, and that just a upbringing of being around males and females so never had strong female role models. And I have 3 daughters. I have 2 daughters and a stepdaughter. And I feel like that the way that I'm bringing these skills up is very different to the way I was brought up, but it just kind of feels like I'm a generation behind some of the stories that have got really strong upbringings with strong female role models. So it was it was almost as though it was a little penny drop in the conversation that we had today.
Yes. Yeah, that's that's the real life example of the stuff that's spoken about in a lot of the literature about having role models and examples that set, I can also, what I was also going to share was, oops, hang on. I didn't have a conversation, an emotional, meaningful conversation with my father until I was 26. He grew up in the generation of being patted on the head and speak when you're spoken to, a post-war baby. His sister on the other side of the war was 15 years older than him. So he struggled to express emotion. My mother, on the other hand, is where I get my talkability from. And I still to this day remember mum talking about dad and saying there's 2 things, among other things I like about your father, 2 things were, one, when we first met, his pajamas were still sticking out the bottom of his trousers when we were at the church dance, because he'd snuck out and he just pulled his clothes on over his pajamas. And I thought that was funny. The other thing was that with mum being 5'1" and dad being 6'5", most other boys always tried to put their hands down her top. And it was just a teenage boy thing that kiss and canoodle and try and get their hands down her top to feel her breasts. And dad always looked her in the eye and never tried that type of stuff on until they were later on in the relationship. So she also used that as a lesson to teach me to respect women when I was a teenage boy. And the funny little story is that I was sitting on the sofa with my first girlfriend, and halfway through a movie she turned around and said to me, "Are you gay?" And I said, "Well, no." Why can't I say it? And she said, "Well, usually I never watch a movie because my boyfriend's always all over me. You haven't even tried to kiss me." And I said, "Oh, well, yeah, of course I want to kiss you, but I thought you wanted to watch the movie." So I was watching the movie and enjoying it with you, and told the story about my mum. And she was absolutely blown away because her expectation was that the boyfriend was just going to be like a limpet onto her trying to make out with her. So yeah, those role models and experiences that we have, share, pass on are extremely important. So I thought maybe I might invite Lisa Mead from Christchurch to be our closing out word. If I can land that on you down there in the deep south. So I know that, so Lisa, if I can introduce Lisa, Lisa's also my accountant. And I won't mention the difference, but a little bit younger, but definitely my wise advisor who I often go to for not just accounting advice, but life advice. So Lisa's also spoken openly before about some of her life experiences. Hence, I thought it would be a great person to close out the session on amongst anything. Over to you, Meadsy.
Yeah, it's a good way to drop me in it on a Monday morning, but awesome chats, awesome kōrero in the groups that I was in. I guess the things that really came through powerfully for me anyway was this drive for action to change and to be the change that we want to see is really important. I guess for me anyway, I champion women on a daily basis. I'm a single parent. I have a wee boy, and it's really relevant for me to be able to teach him to respect women. But I also, as part of my business, I support at-risk Kiwi kids, and so I'm really aware of the risk factors out there. There's poverty, crime, low education, all of these sorts of things that kind of go into building our young people. And for some of these young people, they really need strong role models. And I think what we got to in our discussions anyway was that it doesn't just need to be led by women, it needs to be led by men or all genders. It's really a collective thing. It's not just, one person standing up and being a driver for change. It's actually, we all have a responsibility to do that. And sometimes we had men in our groups as well, and which was awesome. And I've been in a really, I think probably a special place in my previous firms and accounting firms, which are male dominated, where I've actually had men champion me, which has been amazing. I haven't had the women role models, I guess, that others might have had, but I've been in a really unique position where men have really championed me, and I've appreciated that, especially as a single woman, because there's a lot of stigmas, a lot of stereotypes. I deal with that quite regularly. But yeah, I think it really comes down to what can we do as individuals, but how powerful can we be as a collective together to really champion change in this area. And one of the guys in one of our groups said, we shouldn't be doing this just one day a year, putting up a post on LinkedIn and saying something about, what we can do to change this for women, particularly like in the workplace and roles and things like that. But what can we do every day? So for me personally, my mission this year, particularly after last year with COVID and the lockdowns, it's been a real, I guess, a focus for me to see what can I do as an individual and who can I work with collectively and collaborate with around specifically domestic abuse and domestic violence. So I had a domestic abuse situation with my son's father when my son was a baby, and I've written about that. I basically wrote about that over lockdown and since. And it's this year is I guess my time, what I've chosen this year to champion that and to see some change in that, because stigmas and stereotypes still exist, and I think that's come to light in the discussions this morning, that they're still very real for all of us, whether it's race, religion, gender, all of those sorts of things, and that's what we have the ability to change, but it doesn't change without action, and we can all do something to do that, to see that change that we want to see.
Awesome, as I would say. So thank you very much, Lisa. That's a beautiful way to round off this morning's session, and both as individuals and as collectives, the ability to act and continue acting, and not just being once a year, and that there's a whole range of aspects. It's what we've today is focused on women. The world is full of these what I call status quo that need to be changed. And if I can add to that, I think that the Me Too and the Black Lives Matter movements taught the world that we don't need to accept the status quo. And that's why I wholeheartedly get behind and challenge anything that is a status quo that shouldn't be. We shouldn't have to grow up thinking, oh, this is what it's going to be like for me because I'm this race, or this is what it's going to be like for me because I'm this gender. This is what it's going to be like for me because of, if it's not right, we all need to take some responsibility in supporting the change. And just to reiterate, the Me Too and the Black Lives Matter movements taught the world how we can, as a collective, make a change, and how it takes some individual leadership and a range of individuals to follow support, and collectively that difference and change can be made. So I would like to say thank you very much. If there's anyone that does have a dying comment, or burning comment is probably the right way to say it, a burning comment that they would like to share, then by all means, it would be great to pop your hand up and you can be the final word. Was that a hand up, Sherry? No? So no one's jumping out at me. So I really would like to have the last word completed by a woman in honour of International Women's Day. So I'm going to pick the person in the middle of the screen, Jackie Hootwhipper.
Well, thank you, Ryan. Yeah, Houtwhipper, you can say it that way too. I know it's a tricky name. It often trips people up. So that's my husband's name, Dutch Rarotongan. So that was the Dutch side. So I love it. It's an unusual name and it is a tricky one. So what a great session. Thank you so much. When you and I spoke on Friday, Ryan, you'd said, could I reflect on what International Women's Day means and what the event might mean? And for me, where I was thinking at that time was being open to possibility, being open to choices, making choices that serve us and serve others around us. And when I looked at the Choose to Challenge theme on the IWD site, it was about, funnily enough, the very first line is, you think we have thoughts every day, every day the way we think and the way we behave makes a difference. And so I guess my challenge to people is, in addition to taking those actions, think about what you're thinking, who you're listening to, make active choices about what you're focusing on, not just the things that are missing, but the things that are great and that are there. And, choose to make a difference and choose the things that serve you. So great session today. So amazing to connect with so many people and open up that possibility for us all about what we're thinking about and what we can achieve. Much gratitude, Ryan. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Yes, thank you so much for that. I was just getting back to the gallery view. So I am going to say ka kite anō. Thank you all very much. It's been an honour and a pleasure. If you didn't take screenshots, I will have them posted into the group in a minute. And please do share. It's not so much about the AFQY, but about the message and the things that you want to evoke and the change that you want to make and be part of. So I look forward to reading and seeing those come out in due course. Have a lovely day with the rest of your day. Thank you so much for everybody that's been part of it. Ka kite anō.
Ka kite.
Ngā mihi o.
5, 4. See you, Bronnie. 3. Hey, Freya. Talk to you soon. Ka kite anō. Thank you very much to everyone for International Women's Day. Bye from AFQY.